From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Things looked bleak last summer for some poultry contract growers in northern Arkansas.
So these people kind of got rejuvenated, if you will.
A year later, see what's changed. The ag equipment industry continues to see a slump in demand as more layoffs are announced at John Deere, as grain prices fall below what it takes for many farmers to produce them.
We've now taken grain prices into areas that are essentially long-term unsustainable.
The tough financial decisions facing many growers right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer. Pioneer brand corn has the home field advantage with rigorous local testing to give you a winning season. Pioneer brand corn, your best year starts here.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. While corn prices gained back a little ground on Thursday, overall prices are hitting their lowest levels since 2020. And that has many wondering about the impact those lower prices are having back on the farm. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins me. Michelle, these prices don't seem sustainable for farmers.
They're not. Grain prices are at 3.5-year lows, so levels that we haven't seen since the fall of 2020. And remember, at that point, we had input costs which were much lower than they are today. So for many farmers, they're looking at prices that are under the cost of production, especially on corn, and that's making for some painful marketing decisions. Farmers planted one of the most expensive crops in history in the spring of 2023, and now many of the nearly 5 billion bushels of old crop corn still in storage are under the cost of production. That's also true for soybeans and wheat. In fact, these are some of the lowest grain profitability levels since the COVID-19 pandemic.
We've now taken grain prices into areas that are essentially long-term unsustainable because of the lack of profitability for a grower. If we maintain prices in this level, either land costs come down, input costs come down, or prices have to go up, but we're going to see an unsustainable decline in the number of acres that are farmed next year.
It's a growing concern to ag bankers, especially as farmers may be forced to sell some of that grain in coming weeks to free up storage for an even larger 2024 crop. That's creating tough financial and marketing decisions for farmers.
There are times when the market just does not give us an opportunity to sell above the cost of production. And when that happens, it's awful hard to pull the trigger and sell. But you need that cash to keep your operation rolling. You can't look back. Hindsight's always 20/20. You can't look back and allow that to paralyze you.
He says farmers can't look back and allow past mistakes to paralyze them and instead have to be more disciplined on marketing.
Boy, if you get a rally, sell into it aggressively. And if we don't get a rally, you're going to have to set some timelines and some targets where you know you have to move it.
Franzine says fortunately during the recent bull market, many grain producers positioned their operations financially to cushion the blow of these lower prices and negative profit margins. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Now the layoffs continue over at John Deere, with the company reporting another 345 production employees will be laid off. The latest round impacting its facility in Waterloo, Iowa. The cuts will take effect on September 20th. Deere telling news organizations in Iowa they're needed to balance its workforce amid reduced production demand and rising global operational and manufacturing costs. Now, over the past few months, Deere has laid off more than 1,000 employees across the entire company, with Iowa getting hit the hardest due to cuts at its facilities in Davenport, Dubuque, Waterloo, Urbandale, and Ankeny. And the latest tractor and combine sales report from the Association of Equipment Manufacturers puts numbers to the issue right now. It shows sales of all two-wheel drive tractors has dropped more than 11% so far this year. Now for combines, sales are down a whopping 31% in June compared to June of last year, and down more than 17% year to date. In the West, the unrelenting and deadly heat wave has claimed over 24 lives so far, and as Laura Aguirre reports, hundreds of thousands of people in Texas are facing another day without AC amid widespread power outages caused by Hurricane Beryl.
This is the largest outage in our history.
Much like the unrelenting deadly temperatures searing Texas Thursday, the heat is rising around CenterPoint Energy executives to address more than 1 million power outages remaining statewide after Barrow's powerful punch on Monday. Leaders in hard-hit cities like Houston want answers and action.
We've committed within 48 hours to get 50% of our customers back on. We are on target to do that.
CenterPoint officials say it takes time and resources to accommodate the thousands of additional crews mobilizing to help.
You have to make sure that you have the facilities, the food, the catering, everything necessary that takes place.
Some frustrated residents complain that CenterPoint's online outage tracker isn't updating properly.
We're working on the accuracy right now. Don't worry, we know you're out of power and we are going to get to you.
Getting to those in need has been a major challenge for rescue crews in the western U.S.
We're definitely getting a lot more calls in the city.
Another day with triple-digit highs across the region means even walking outside can turn lethal fast.
People underestimate because they're not going out with the intention to do a 10-mile hike.
And even skilled rescuers must calculate heat risk when calls come in.
Is the likelihood of us finding this person better than the risk of one of our own getting hurt or someone else, getting injured in the process?
A gamble to consider as forecasters predict the savage heat will continue for some parts of the West into the weekend. I'm Laura Aguirre reporting for AgDay.
And we're learning more about the damage caused by Hurricane Beryl in Texas. Winds produced from the storm damaged a row of tanks and grain elevators operated by United Ag. This is in El Campo, about 40 miles north of where the storm's landfall occurred. The grain handling facility went on to say once the debris is cleared, the elevator should be back in operation, and they still have 4 elevator locations running. United Ag's general store still managed to provide relief to the community in the form of meals after the storm. Now, the Texas Farm Bureau says the heavy rain and winds damaged crops along the Texas coast. It says farmers are hopeful most of the corn and cotton crops will be salvageable. The troubles continue for Ruidoso, New Mexico, the area first hit with wildfires and now even more flooding. This was a scene earlier this week in the town about 70 miles west of Roswell. You can see heavy mud covered major highways and streets. The National Weather Service issuing a flash flood emergency. That area in its second week of the monsoon season with more flooding expected. That extreme and record-breaking heat isn't done with the West just yet. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht has more for us. Matt?
We'll start off looking at the drought monitor. Now, it's worth keeping in mind this does not include all of the rainfall from Beryl, that leftover remnant system. But you can see a big improvement in terms of our drought back into Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, Minnesota. We're seeing actually no drought for the first time in actually a few months in some of those locations. Into Houston and Louisiana, where that rain does include, this data does include the rain from Beryl. You can kind of see we're blank right where it tracked. As you get back up into the northeast, again, that is not included in the drought monitor yet. We'll have to wait until next Thursday when that is actually eventually released. Still, extreme to exceptional drought back into New Mexico, Big Bend area of Texas, a little bit of the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma. Also Oklahoma in general getting back closer to a moderate, possibly even a severe drought in a few locations back up here to the north as well. So again, there's that latest drought monitor in and across the United States. And we saw some really tall corn for the 4th of July, but what about the bean crop? KL Pork in Iowa says that knee-high beans is the new July 4th standard. He says he's seen impressive and crazy weather lately. Yeah, he's right. Even having to wear a light sweatshirt in July. I'll have more in your forecast coming up.
Some good news about work to clean up a key waterway. Researchers are giving the Chesapeake Bay a grade of C+. Now, researchers at the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Sciences providing that report card. That's the highest grade earned since 2002, scoring a 55%, which is a 4% increase over the last year. Now, the entire watershed got a grade of a C, which is the same as last year. It's reported about 1/3 of the area's watershed is used for farming. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation says farmers in the area are adopting conservation and preservation measures, and that retaining farmland is critical for the future of the watershed because that area is losing land to sprawling suburban development. An Arizona rancher will not face a retrial on murder charges. Now, we've been keeping you updated on the case involving 75-year-old George Allen Kelly. Kelly was accused in the shooting death of Gabriel Cuen Budumia, which happened in January of last year on Kelly's property near the border. Jurors were not able to reach a consensus on the shooting, and the judge declared a mistrial. Now, a judge in Santa Cruz County has denied a request by prosecutors who argue the possibility of a new trial should be left open in case new witnesses emerge. Now, the judge saying, quote, the evidence simply was not there and that there was no reason to believe that another jury would come to any different conclusion, end quote. Corn, wheat, and cattle futures all trading higher on Thursday. We'll break it all down next in Markets Now. And later, after finding out their contracts were ending, these Arkansas poultry growers worried about the future. Today, they're optimistic about what's ahead. That story in the country. Now, here's something we haven't seen in a while. Corn futures were higher, wheat too. AgDay's Michelle Rook is back with a look at what's going on in Markets Now.
Well, finally, some green on the board for both corn and livestock futures trade on Thursday. Dave Chatterton with Strategic Farm Marketing is joining us with analysis. Dave, you know, the pop that we saw in especially the grains, was it mostly short covering since we were so oversold?
Yeah, Michelle, might actually refer to it as a little bit more position squaring. Of course, we've got a key USDA report coming out a little bit later today, 11 a.m. Central Time. And in doing so, market had been deeply oversold going into that. And of course, you know, making new low after new low. We did see a new low in beans on Thursday night and some rebound, or excuse me, on Wednesday night, some rebound into that Thursday session, and hoping that we can keep that going today. But, you know, there were rumors in the trade early yesterday that China might be nosing around for some U.S. corn. No confirmation of that today. You know, we'll hope that that's the case. They did buy some beans finally this week. That would certainly help our attitudes just a little bit. But the key driver here, of course, looking beyond the USDA, continues to be weather. And on that front, we're just not finding much for the bulls to work with here.
Yeah. So we've held some key support areas like in corn, December corn, the $4 area, but the funds are so short in this market. Do they keep pushing us through those levels, you think, or not?
Yeah, I think it's very possible, Michelle. I mean, I think you know, the momentum of the trade here is definitely lower. The charts continue to point lower, and you know, from in a computer trading world here, you know, they will, I think, continue to try and push lower until somebody pushes back, meaning a buyer emerges. And you know, we just talked about China. Typically, they are a value or a price-sensitive buyer when they think prices are cheap, even if, you know, their stocks are relatively healthy or if their margins are relatively poor, they will still buy. But we haven't found that yet this year. There's a political element involved to that, but we need to find a spot where either the speculative element of the marketplace or the end user and consumer decides that, hey, we're going to step in here and buy.
And on Friday or today, we could get another reminder to those funds of how big this crop is, old crop, and going into an maybe even bigger new crop situation, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're going to incorporate the stocks and acreage data that we got from the USDA on the June 30th report. So certainly those stocks are going to add supply. The corn acres are going to go up. Doubtful that the USDA adjusts their yield at this particular point when you look at the crop ratings, you know, where they're at right now.
Thanks for joining us, Dave Chatterton, Strategic Farm Marketing. We'll have more AgDay.
And here's a look at that temperature outlook between the 18th and the 24th. The ridging that we talked about starting to break down, but we still have the two areas that are going to be holding on to above normal temperatures. That's, of course, in the southeast, the Gulf Coast states, as well as back up here into Montana. Again, this goes all the way through the 24th. The entire month, it seems like, for July has been above average for Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, but also into Seattle and Oregon, Seattle, Washington, and Oregon since July 1st and all the way through the 24th. It looks like that pattern will hold. The pattern that we've been talking about all week long, let's take this into the weekend. Really, we just kind of reinforce that not much has shifted from when we talked back on Monday and Tuesday. The weekend forecast, your Saturday and Sunday, you got some ridging back out here towards the west, a shallow trough trying to dig through, and then the big focus this weekend isn't over the United States. It's actually going to be in the Atlantic, where a dominant ridge of high pressure is going to warm up not only the ocean temperatures, but also keep things quiet and wrap in some moisture on the East Coast. So that's where we may get some heavy rainfall both Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, with some of the rain between that high and also a weak low working up through parts of Florida and the southeast. So again, this is a jet stream on a Sunday. By Monday and Tuesday of next week, a shallow trough is going to dig through and increase some of those rain chances, bring in slightly cooler temperatures for a small portion of the United States. You get south of that line, and it is still going to be hot and steamy Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week. Not much there in the tropics to follow. That precipitation forecast give you a better idea kind of what we're seeing. Mainly on the East Coast is where we could see the more substantial rainfall. Blue Springs, Missouri, partly cloudy, high around 92 degrees. Wisconsin, mostly sunny, high about 85. And Hudson Green River, Wyoming, mostly sunny, high of 95 degrees.
On Smart Farming Friday, where we look at some of the newest innovations and releases from the industry, we start with questions about USDA's approval of a Chinese GMO soybean. That issue being raised by the chairman of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, John Molinar, Michigan. He's questioning the speed of approvals for gene-edited soybeans from Key Biodesign, a Chinese-based agricultural biotech company. He says the company was, quote, prioritized for USDA regulatory approval ahead of many American agricultural companies that currently face extensive delays, end quote. Now, Molinar is asking for a review of the process and a look at how it may impact U.S. farmers. Chinese-owned Syngenta Biologicals is teaming up with Intrinsic Bio, a Silicon Valley company, to roll out a new nitrogen efficiency product. Now, it uses endophytes, or small microorganisms that colonize in plants to fix atmospheric nitrogen directly into the plant. Now, they say it can reduce the need for synthetic fertilizer while increasing the availability and uptake of things like phosphorus and micronutrients. The product will roll out as a seed treatment or as a foliar application. And we know plant closures and layoffs can be devastating news. Up next, we'll see how some poultry growers in Arkansas are faring after losing their contracts in the country. You'll remember we told you about this last year. Several poultry growers for Tyson in Arkansas had their contracts terminated after the company closed 4 processing facilities. But as the Arkansas Farm Bureau tells us, several of those growers are now back in business.
At least 8 Tyson growers who were shut down less than a year ago in North Arkansas will soon be back in business. Farmers were stunned on August the 7th when Tyson told them the birds in their barns would be their last. Tyson was shutting down its Noel, Missouri plant and needed less production in the area. That has changed.
Fast forward till today, this past few weeks, Tyson has come back and asked, we have about 8 producers in this area that they've asked to come back. A 4-year contract, I believe, is what they're offering to come back and grow. Great thing for the growers in the community, and as a bank and a financial institution, a great relief. So these people kind of got rejuvenated, if you will. And it's good for the poultry business because that means they need the meat. That's good for insert any integrator. If chicken's selling, that's good for all of us poultry producers.
The poultry producers' heartbreak of 11 months ago has turned into a financial win for those inking new contracts with Tyson. In fact, it's been a fiscal bump in 3 ways for the farmers.
In essence, yes. I mean, they did not have a year or 11 months worth of expenses other than maybe some payments that came through. But the guys that lost birds, they did get a buyout, if you will. At the time when Tyson come in and terminated the contracts, the timing probably couldn't have been at a better time for some of them going into the winter. That's where us poultry producers spend a lot of our overhead is in propane or natural gas heating expense. So setting out, I mean, there would have been some wear and tear on your building setting empty. Yeah, they didn't have the overhead or expense, and then getting the pay. Those people did get compensated for those shutdowns, and they got the contracts back, and from what I understand, they did not have to return any of that money, which is great for them. We need to come together and strengthen this contract for the growers and for the better of the grower, if you will. Farm Bureau has helped dearly in that with what we do in our poultry commodity meetings. You know, Farm Bureau being a grassroots organization, we get a lot of feedback from our counties. We've done some things at the state level with doing some southern poultry commodity meetings with some of the area states here lately, getting with GIPSA and USDA and kind of talking over some things, some issues that we feel as growers that we need to address. We just kind of want the integrators to be held accountable for their side of the contract as well as as us growers, we're held accountable to the letter of the law of that contract. We just want to make sure that all is fair in that.
And our thanks to the Arkansas Farm Bureau for sharing that update with us. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Dennis. Have a good night.